Have you ever, correctly, had a gut feeling to dislike someone who, on the surface, was a cool person that everybody else liked? What's that story? I never trusted my ex-BF's uncle. I just knew he was trouble and had issues with him visiting or my ex visiting him. He was arrested in Florida last year for production and selling meth and hosting a prostitution ring out of his home. Later learned the ex partook in all the activities at his uncle's home. Apparently my gut was right about the uncle, but not about my ex. My snake did. I had the sweetest, chillest ball python who never nipped or hissed or reared up or anything. She'd just curl up with you and hang out. One day a friend brought over some of his friends and all of a sudden my snake went nuts, standing straight up in her tank and hissing at one of the guys. A couple of weeks later, that dude robbed my house while I was out of town. R.I.P. Guinevere. A good snake. Interviewing a guy for a job. Something doesn't feel right, but my interviewing partner really seemed to like him. We get to his portfolio of work and I see my side project that I worked on alone as one of his websites. So I start asking him questions about it. What challenges he had, how the client was, etc. I let him go on and on, then I say, I have to level with you. This is my work. You are showing me my own work. Look at the source near the footer. It has my website in the comments. He went ghost white and I just sat there. After that I coached him a little on how not to suck and he left. We called the contract agency that sent him and let them know. My older mother got this boyfriend. Mom was in her 60s and the boyfriend was probably mid 60s also. One day she brought him over to my house, where I was a single mom to a 3-year-old boy. I'm usually friendly, or at the least polite. But I looked at that guy and said no. Don't come in my house. My mom was shocked. She said wang diphthong. This is blah blah. My boyfriend. I told her I was sorry. I shut the door. About 6 months later he went to jail for raping boys. My mom brought her new boyfriend over the house one time for me to meet him. He weirded me out. I can't tell you why, but I didn't like him. Maybe it's because he was a 35-year-old man who wore visors. Friendly and funny guy who my family liked. A year into their relationship he beat the hell out of my mom and stole her dog. Probably the closest I've come to an assassination attempt. Edit 1. I didn't go after him as not to implicate my mom. Also, we got her dog back. Close bracket. Edit 2. Yep. He's in jail. My childhood best friend's mother's boyfriend. He creeped me out and I hated being over her house when he was there. Her family went on a ski trip with mine. And my parents both thought he was great, funny, charming, etc. They didn't understand why I didn't like him. Years later, my best friend told me that he sorely abused her starting when she was about 9. I probably was picking up on her fear of him. When I played high school football we had an equipment manager who had been doing the job for decades and was absolutely adored by the community. Guy was in his 70s 80s. One day, I'm ready for a game early. So I head out to the bus that's taking us. I see him loading stuff up. So I offer to help him load a few things. Once we're all loaded on the bus, he walks to me in the back, cause I was a cool kid, and hands me a Hostess cupcake in front of everyone as a thank you. He handed me the cupcake, looked me in the eye, and this sense of dread just falls on me. I have no idea why. And everyone's looking at me so I act normal. I eat the cupcake, because I was, and still am, a fat ass and will eat any cupcake you hand me, and just kinda write off the feeling. That summer he was arrested for sorely assaulting some 15-year-old girl. I'm pretty sure they thought he did more, but couldn't prove it or something. While in the army we moved into a new house in upstate New York. We were being neighborly and talked to a guy across the street. He had 5 kids. No wife. He also had multiple neighborhood kids playing in the yard. He told us we can always send ours over. He gave us both this horrible feeling, so we smiled and gtfo. About a year later my wife told me I was in Kandahar, that his kids were taken from him. He had been molesting them at least ever since his wife died. The amount of pedophile stories in this thread is freaking me out. Ex-wife's second husband. Took 10 years but I was right. He is currently on year 1 of a 32-year sentence for repeated rape of his daughter. Took 10 years but I was right. Nice. Close bracket. He is currently on year 1 of a 32-year sentence for repeated rape of his daughter. Yes. But I suppressed it so quickly and fast. Because I felt like it was horribly ungracious since she was being so friendly. Over the next couple years, she became my closest friend in the new town I had moved to. Then the following couple years it vacillated between being close, but just feeling like she really didn't want me around or was messing with me a little bit. Turns out she was having an affair with my husband and was literally intentionally driving me crazy. My ex-wife's childhood friend married a man I hated. Just didn't feel right about him. He had 2 kids the same age as ours and we were asked multiple times about sleepovers and I always said no. Looked a dick but didn't care. Then a year or so later her friend wakes up one night to find him sexually assaulting her daughter. He freaks out, beats her and runs. When I met this girl, I found she was a bit too close to my BF all the time. Kept having this feeling about her that something was off but everybody liked her so though I might be wrong. I did tell my BF that evening that I thought she was nice but I did not trust her. Few months later it came out that they were a little bit more than friends. That was a real eye-opener for me. To always trust my gut feeling. My mom was a single mom and did the best she could. However, she thought it might be better to leave me with the neighbor than at home alone. From the age of 6, I pleaded with my mom to let me stay home alone until she got home from work. That I would be okay. My intuition was right. The neighbor was convicted of multiple murders of single mom 1 and 2 towns over when DNA evidence came into being. He only liked to date and kill non-obese women. Fortunately my mother was fat. Yo mama so fat. She survived and lives a happy life. My former handball coach. Everybody liked him. But I had a weird feel about him. After training he would come into our showers and give out shower caps for us to use. Or in the winter, he would bring us snow to play. A few years later, he got arrested for sexual assault. When he went to a training camp with younger girls. Apparently he got into their tents and played with them. Apparently, when I was 4 or 5, my grandma introduced me to some new boyfriend. Everyone liked him. But I would have nothing to do with him. Wrinkled my nose. Wouldn't be left alone by him. I guess he just came into her apartment one day and walked at her with something behind his back. Said nothing. She got an eerie feeling and said, "Are you going to kill me?" With a dead-faced stare he came at her. She managed to jump over some furniture and get away. She's always been in great shape. Running 3 miles a day until age 80. She got somewhere safe. Called the police and never saw him again. Your grandma sounds awesome. Leaping over furniture and escaping from a murderer. My sister's boyfriend. I just immediately found him to be very fake and disingenuous. But the rest of the family loved him and found him very charming. He owned a running store franchise that was more successful than the original store and was also doing well trading on the stock market. He sold the store back to the owners for a ton of money to focus on the stock market. But this was around the time of the market crash. So to help with that he worked at the store as a salesman. They eventually got married and bought a huge house. And that's when the cops came knocking at the door to their large home with a view. He wasn't rich. He never owned the store. He was only ever a worker and had been stealing cash from the register products and selling them on eBay. The divorce came quick after that. Not me. But my sister. She has this uncanny ability to detect crazy people. My first boyfriend who was secretly abusive. She called it after knowing him for 2 days. My next boyfriend's mom who eventually forced me to take a pregnancy test because I had been looking rather pregnant and she wanted to know. She knew after the first visit meeting her. My toxic ex-best friend of 7 years. She knew after 1 year. All of the people my sister calls out for being crazy. I now believe and avoid wholeheartedly. I want to meet your sister and find out about myself. A pastor who was involved in the community outreach program for a prison, which I volunteered to for the first time. Seemed very friendly on the outside but seems really creepy to me. He kept putting his hands on my shoulder on that day and got my number from one of the volunteers and called me non-stop that night to say he is lonely and wants to talk. I was 14 at the time. When I first met my birth mother's uncle, I was instantly creeped out by him. He's in his 40s in a band. Has heaps of friends everywhere he goes and gets on well with everyone. But I just had a horrible gut feeling and didn't trust him. He's a really touchy-feely guy and he would try and kiss us on the lips and passed it off as just being family. Turns out he touched my birth mum and had sex with her when she was a child. My mother let us as children hang out with her rapist. His son, my birth mum's cousin, is a convicted pedophile too and just recently got out of prison. I'm so glad I was in long-term foster care. But I really wish I wasn't allowed contact with my birth family. They are truly the definition of f-ked up. Edit. He's in his 50s. He was in his 40s when I met him. When I first started dating my wife, her best friend also started dating a dude named Brian. We drove her friend over to Brian's house one day and went inside and met him. And I could tell right away that he was a f-king scumbag. It wasn't anything he said or did. I just credit the instinct all guys have to detect obvious pieces of shit. I didn't say anything because I was also the new boyfriend and didn't want to create any problems. 3 months later, Brian knocks up the friend and tells her he can't have anything to do with her anymore because he's had another girlfriend for a year. And our friend was just a side fling. There are people who are nice for a host of different reasons that aren't too bad. Then there are narcissists who charm everyone so they can all be part of their little TV show. Majority of people can't tell the difference between the two type of people. But the ones that can will instantly feel repulsed by such a person. And the narcissists can spot them right away. And attempt to have them socially excluded. They're like snakes. When I was a senior in high school, my multimedia teacher was loved by everybody. But I hated that guy. He was a complete arsehole to me and I backed at him. He was super chill with the guys and an incorrigible flirt with the girls. We're 98% under 18. But everybody laughed when I'd say something about how weird he was around the chicks and was even told it was because I was overweight, unattractive, and too sarcastic mouthy. And that's why he picked on me. Oh well. Life went on. A few years after high school I heard he was fired for having sex with an underage student. His poor wife at the time worked in the attendance office too and had to take time away from work so the gossip would simmer down. I knew that guy was a shitdick. My first girlfriend's husband. She and I had a bad breakup. But eventually got to be friends again. Hanging out with the same crowd all the time. She met a guy who lived out of state and fell in love with him. I disliked him immediately. Everybody else thought he was fine. They got married. And a couple of years later, he started beating the crap out of her. She wised up and left. When I was a boy, 7-8. At a coffee shop I would go to with my parents frequently, there would often be a middle-aged Asian woman hanging out. She was a regular. The baristas knew her. My parents were friendly with her. Sometimes I would play board games with my parents and her. She gave me the f-king creeps. But I couldn't pinpoint why. My parents knew I didn't like her much but not the full extent. Anyway. The very first time I was with her without my parents there, they were starting the car or something like that, she tried to get me to come back to her house. She wouldn't take no for an answer and got pushy. When my parents came back I told them what happened and we never went there again. Edit. Apparently a lot of people are unhappy that I mentioned the woman's ethnicity. It's a descriptor. I mentioned she was Asian for the same reason I said she was middle-aged and a woman. Guy at my school. Everybody else liked but I had a bad vibe. My girlfriend at the time told me to not be so negative and automatically dislike people. Since then he lied to her about something I said. Lied to me about talking to her. And then lied to everyone saying we broke up because I cheated on her. And guess who she's dating now? One of my brothers was dating this girl. And everyone else had met her several times before I did since I was off at college. So the first impression I get of her is when she shows up at our house and just walks right in. Doesn't knock. Doesn't let anyone know she's in there. Just walks her happy ass inside and sits on the couch. So then when I come down the hallway into the living room, the bitch had this super vapid smile on her face. I just had this weird gut instinct that she was hiding something from everyone and was going to fight to the death to keep it hidden. I expressed to my mom that she gave me a weird vibe and I got told to stop being jealous. But long story shorter, she ended up having an entire other relationship and life with another guy 3 hours away. Jimmy Savile. Turned out everyone had same thought and a lot of people knew. My sister's class at school had a competition to write to him to get onto his Jim All Fix It show. She was picked. And she really wanted to do the thing she wrote about. But she completely refused to go to the show because she said he was creepy. She got in a ton of trouble at school because of it. But I guess that was better than what could have happened. Kind of related. Not a person but a dog. Years ago I had a GF who lived at home with her sister. Parents. 3 dogs and a cat. One of the dogs was a big goofy lab that loved everyone. I mean everyone. 2-year-olds could climb all over him and he loved it. Anyway, the sister had been seeing some guy for a little while. Maybe a month, and she's bringing him home to meet the family for the first time. The guy hadn't even come to the door yet. The dog was in the house and went ballistic. I had never seen anything like it. He went from goofball to apex predator. Needless to say, he couldn't come in the house. They had to leave. About 2 weeks later the sister comes home. He had slapped her and she ended it. She also found out that he beat his ex-wife before her. TL. DR. Labrador could smell the evil on a wife beater. Edit. I am a human, not a doge, and I am a good boy. My parents had this family friend when I was around 15-16. Friendly. Funny guy who gave me the absolute creeps. I didn't want to be alone in a room with him. He made my stomach turn. Anyway. About 5 years after I moved out of home, he wound up in court. Convicted of 3, very historic, back in the 80s, cases of SZIL violation, indecent assault of a girl under 12 when she was between 8 and 11. And 1 charge of RP of a girl under 16, 9-year-old girl. Sometimes our guts really know what's up. Edit. I'm that arsehole that edits their comment after it gets popular, and gets the you poem for your sprog treatment. Holy crap. Sorry. I wrote this comment at like 1 AM my time and definitely didn't expect it to blow up like this. When I woke up to my inbox, RIP, this morning I went back and double checked the exact charges. And have corrected them in my comment. The RP victim was actually younger than I remembered. I'm sorry so many of you have experienced something similar. Not me but my mother, who had several times. The biggest however was when my mother was starting to get sick from cancer and became extremely religious, like crazy religious. Anyways, she started saying a lot of things that the family first were concerned about but would shrug off, because when it starts happening that much to someone you love, you don't want to even accept they are going crazy. She kept saying my dad always had a red face when he got home from work and started accusing him of cheating. My dad was always busy and always had airtight reasons to where he was with evidence, and my mom just seemed more nuts. She then hired a private detective, which costs thousands, and the whole family got pissed because this guy didn't find anything. She then hired another one and everyone was starting to get really angry when this one discovered the whole time my dad was cheating. My mom didn't even brag about how we thought she was crazy, she just only cared about how it affected us kids. Best person I knew. I'm a chef, and within 1 minute of hiring someone I know if they are going to work or will need to be replaced. First impressions mean a lot. So if you bring up killing your wife, happened last week, or pain pills, Yesterday, within the first 5 minutes of your first shift it's not gonna work out. Because you're an idiot.